Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm going to jump right into it, guys. You can find Gorilla Brave at gorillabrave.love, or you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. That's where all those educational pieces are coming out. That's where we've taken it. As by the time this comes out, guys, you'll see that we've changed those educational pieces into comic strip format. We found that everyone, especially in food and entrepreneur space, because there's so much data coming at you guys and you're trying to do your reels and all that if we were pushing reels on you guys and photos, that it was just part of the stuff you were hyper doing and you were less getting from it. And one of the responses we got back is it needs to be more fun. Okay. So we created characters, guys, 250 of them. And we've created a whole studio at Gorilla Brave to generate all the comics, the cartoons, and everything for everyone on an international level. So it's not only that I listen to you guys that are giving me feedback on the podcast or on Gorilla Brave, but we're taking it to a next level. So you can see that on Gorilla Brave. As I'm recording this, we're about a week into releasing those comics. By the time this comes out, it'll be a few months. So that's just so everyone knows. Take a look at it if you haven't already. Gorilla Brave, there is all the comic strips and stuff on there. We introduced the characters on LinkedIn and Facebook, but LinkedIn only has the comic book strips. So that's there for you guys. They're usually about 8 to 10 panels long. So pretty easy. And there is the educational information in the post below. So we're trying to export knowledge, guys. That's the goal here. That's the goal of the podcast. Internationally, break down walls, human constructs, borders. We created them. God didn't. We did. So it's natural to think that as food and beverage entrepreneurs in our journey and the things that we do and our impact and our influence, our voices matter and they carry. And no matter where in the world, guys, that you are, freedom carries through food and beverage entrepreneurship. It has existed since the beginning of the world, people serving other people food. As soon as we got mobile as humans and started moving around, restaurants, inns, hotels, motels, whatever they were, inns, sleep and eats, they popped up. So the food entrepreneur, the beverage entrepreneurs have been around a long time, guys, even before there was government structures to call them businesses. So they've existed before empires. We've existed around empires. Our food, pizza, pasta, whatever has existed through empires, through the fall of civilizations, the rise of civilizations. So what am I saying? It's time to stop thinking, I get patriotism, I get the world thing, but guess what? We're a part of a greater kingdom, guys. And if we go and we look at the apostles, if we look at Simon Peter, he was a fishing businessman with 2 boats, at least. He was commanding people around. You think Jesus went to the guy who was just a fisherman, or you think Jesus went to the guy who commanded the fishermen, who had the respect and was the leader that would have the most impact, that would steer the ships in any direction when he asked him to? So he didn't have to command it and then have someone else ask the commander to do it. He went straight to the entrepreneur. His name was Simon, who became Peter, who became the rock. Okay, so why do I do this? Why are we exporting the information? Why are we doing it? Because it doesn't need to be paid for. It's free. We paid for it. Doesn't mean everyone else does. It doesn't mean that education needs to be $1 million and a kid in Africa can't get it, so they can't become an entrepreneur in their country. What are we saying? We existed before there was education. Should we get education as entrepreneurs? Absolutely. That's why Gorilla Brave exists. But do we need it to be successful or an entrepreneur? No, there are plenty of people that don't have it. However, could we be better at it if we had it and it were easily accessible and it didn't cost us money in a loan? So that loan would be one of the reasons we couldn't get money or save money to start a business. Yeah, that would be a lot better. That's the goal here, guys. How do we stop making it so hard to be individualistic and entrepreneurial and grow our own food or make our own food? Or, hey, why not have aeroponics in our restaurant and chop our own lettuce? I don't know. But we have to start thinking that way. We get too caught up in thinking around these boundaries and these borders and these constructs, but they're human constructs. We created them. They make sense. We think they're logical when they're not, because they are right there in front of us and they exist every day, but they may not be logical. They may just exist because they were a way of getting something done 100 years ago. So education is that. Education is a way, in buildings, in things, was a way of getting things done 100 years ago. We don't need to charge money. There isn't need to be massive amounts of money for it. The world is flattening. I have it in my head. You guys have it in your heads. We need to give it away. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. That was a long intro, but I wanted to give that to everyone. I've Johnny Yarusi from Johnny Pork Roll and Coffee Too from New Jersey. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing just fine. I enjoyed your intro very much.
Yeah. So I'm going to give it to you. It's your show. I've talked a lot. I want to talk to you about your story, how you got into Johnny Pork Roll, which is a brick and mortar and a food truck, and Coffee Too. We've had in-depth conversations. I'm going to anchor it for the audience. You're doing food the right way. You're paying attention. I think that that's a big part of it. It's why I'm interested in this. I know we're already going to have to do a part 2 because we're going to run out of time today. You and I have been talking already for 45 minutes before we hit record. So.
I miss having those kind of conversations, and to tie into what you said in the beginning, it's information, it's sharing, excuse me, ideas and information and education and all that keeps you going and informs you as you keep moving in your journey on these things. I feel very blessed that I've gotten to where I have around a piece of pork meat. It's crazy when I tell you how this all happened.
Yeah. No, and I will tell you, I'm well educated, guys. I did my bachelor's at Dickinson College. I have an international business degree. I have a business management degree. I also have minors in Spanish culture, Spanish language, and Spanish culture. And then I did my MBA later on. I did it as a 5-school system at University of North Carolina with Agade out of Mexico, FGV out of Brazil, Erasmus out of the Netherlands, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong out of Hong Kong. We had 139 students from around the world from 5 different universities in one MBA program where we lived, interned, and had to keep jobs at the same time and do this all over the world it was a 27-month period. So not an easy program. In internships, food and beverage. I'm trying to be an entrepreneur, run businesses. There's some people, CFOs, COOs, big companies, guys, CVS, GE. Here, Mr. Entrepreneur, I had to convince them to let me in the room when overall my experience is much broader. I can run a business, but in the comparison of status of a company, you have to convince someone sometimes as an entrepreneur that you are of the best of the executives in the world, even though you make more money than them and run bigger companies than them. Because you're an entrepreneur and because you're not publicly traded, you have to deal with that. So that is part of being an entrepreneur. You're always underestimated. But then I did Denver Seminary also. I will tell you guys, the amount of money that I spent and the amount of knowledge I got, do I think it's necessary? Yes. But do I think it has turned into something that has grown for the sake of keeping the institution? Yeah, I do. The money, raising money the way they do, using the government to get loans in the way we do in the United States, it's a way to keep control over the system. And I know no one wants to hear that. But the reality is education doesn't need to be controlled. If anyone proved that, Phoenix proved it online, guys. They started flattening the system. We just haven't caught on to it yet because for some reason as humans, we only respect degrees from the traditional source, even though that traditional source has only been around for about 400 years. If we're talking about universities all the way back to Europe, in that traditional, that way we see it. If we're talking about universities and schooling, obviously it goes all the way back to the Greeks and the Romans in education, but it's traditional, guys. So let's talk about pork roll. Let's talk about Johnny. Let's talk about everything that we're trying to do here, your business, but we're getting into the weeds here. But I do agree, for me, the world was flattened. People, mentors, my father being a CEO of a $1 billion+ company and taking me everywhere with him because I went to private school and like traveling, and played soccer all over the place. I got to see his facilities. Those are the education, I think, guys. Like, there's nothing more. Did my education in school or my MBA or now Denver Seminary help me because I'm working at the same time I'm doing it? Has Denver Seminary help with Gorilla Brave and the spirituality we're weaving into that? Yeah, absolutely. And pursuing a Master of Divinity and leadership for sure. But mentors, things like podcasts, things like books, spending time in businesses that I didn't know. I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 years transitioning in life, knowing donuts, spending time in deli shops, actually slicing meats at night, making donuts at night, making pizza at night. Why? I had to go back to my roots, number one. But number two is that I had to learn what I didn't know. And I wanted to learn what it's like for everyone or the food businesses now. Because I had them, and I've had them for many years, but I haven't built them. I haven't actually been on the floor of a donut shop or a pizza shop in a long time. And what I found, guys, more than ever is that we don't educate our staff the same way anymore. Maybe they don't want to learn. We don't put, and by that I mean the morals and the ethics. We don't take it upon ourselves to grow the humans anymore as entrepreneurs or business owners as much as we used to 20, 25, 30 years ago. I don't know, guys. It was different. And that's not me saying it's better.
Do you think it was different, though? I only say that because I started in a food truck in New Jersey, which is kind of, I just always had this crazy idea to get into food. And my life took a really hard left turn, and I was in a crazy place. And prior to this inception as this little fictitious character, and I'm a real person, obviously, but Johnny Porco, I've kind of become my business. So my face is me and vice versa. And there's pluses and minuses to that, as anyone can imagine, especially in food where everybody has an opinion. But when I started my food truck, and even prior to doing that, a hurricane happened in New Jersey, turned my life upside down. My father passed away, and my wife of almost 12 years said, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And my ad agency in New York completely imploded, and I couldn't find a job. And I was in my mid-40s with two little twin girls.
You and I have a lot in common.
Yeah, I have two little twin girls that are just graduating high school and going on to college. So as I joke, I'm going to have to start robbing 7-Elevens again, or I'm going to have to sell a heck of a lot more pork roll sandwiches. But when I tried to start the truck, and I had this idea in my head, and I was working, to your point, as a barista in a coffee shop for $10 an hour plus tips, serving women who were younger than me and on their way to their $50 an hour or $100 an hour yoga class. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? How am I ever going to get anything back? Because I couldn't find a job. And so, believe it or not, it's kind of funny you brought that up, but I used to go to Mass every day. I would ride my bike because I lived on the beach. And I would go to Mass every day and just say, oh, please, please, please help me out. Just steer me in the right direction. I know I got more to give. I got more to do. Just steer me. And I led from the little coffee shop to the idea to start a little food truck. And my first partner was the guy I was working for, who was built this little coffee business, and I'm happy to report he's done extremely well, which I'm proud to say I played a hand in. But he has about 12 of these little locations, and he's still doing coffee. But at one part, we split ways. I go off to do the food truck. Anytime I tried to go to a food truck event or talk to some guy selling hot dogs on the side of the street, they didn't want to tell you zippo, nothing. Why are you asking all these questions? And I don't know if that's a very New Jersey, almost like, dare I say, Italian thing. Like, I didn't see nothing. I don't know nothing. But nobody really wanted to help you. You really had to fumble around and try to find things out. And at that point, somebody gave me a book called The Food Truck Handbook. Some guy who started the
I love that book. It's like the food, it's for dummies, basically. Like,
and a lot of it I knew.
Yeah.
And the one part in food, because I had worked in food like anybody in college, grad school, bartending, waiting tables, summer as a busboy, so I had been around the service industry and food, and growing up Italian again, I was always around food in New Jersey. So the idea of starting a food truck seemed outlandish to me because I hadn't worked in food in almost 17 years directly. But prior to that, all I did was advertising and branding and brand development and marketing. And slowly I became very proficient in food. So whether it was Divine Chocolate or a grass-fed beef brand out of Montana, I had a hand in developing some of these businesses. And furthermore, helping them translate into the digital realm. So I might be working with Churritos, the old school Mexican soda, or as I said, a grass-fed beef producer. I started to see how all these little parts could come together in a food business. And at that time in New York, food trucks were starting to pop up in Manhattan, almost as these real cute little novelty trucks. And there was one truck that would frequent Union Square that I absolutely adored in every sense. And it was called the dessert truck. And all they sold were little French pastries and coffee. And the backstory was there were some ex-Balthazar chefs who got disenfranchised and went out on their own, which in food, that's the number one problem. Back to when you say, well, educate, inspire these people. Yes, but the risk is, and you know the risk, they're going to either take what you do and do it better. They're going to create a competitive brand against you. So this first food truck I adored really was that exact disruptive kind of little model. I'm going to take what's in a brick and mortar, repackage it in a cute little way, and drive around Manhattan. So I saw this truck and I just thought, wow, this is neat. It's like this multi-dimensional media food mobile thing. I'm like, there should be a truck in New Jersey that just sells pork roll and coffee. There's nothing more New Jersey than a pork roll sandwich. And I grew up eating this stuff, as have generations of people in my state. And so I threw caution to the wind and I started my little Johnny pork roll truck. And I ran around and got chased by the police and firemen and all that. And took any backyard party I could get. Paid my child support on time every week. I swear to God, it was like a hustle. And then eventually it started to catch on and I started to catch on and it all fell into place. And I was growing. And I really thought, wow, I'm going to be like Jersey Mike's one day. I'm going to make this progress as the king of the breakfast sandwich and the pork roll. And then the pandemic happened. I got smacked down again. And I was like, oh, and it coincided with the launch of my little store, which I'm proud to say is still in business. Thank God. But that really was a knock on my whole progress. I crawled out of COVID, got going again. And then, of course, inflation hit and eggs went through the roof and pork went through the roof. So now I'm dealing with the inflation aspect of it. And there was something else you said, and I felt this way about any person I've ever hired. And I've hired some, excuse my French, but some people, most guys would go, are you kidding me? There's no way you could hire this guy and put him in a food business. Whether they're a musician with multiple piercings in their face and tattoos, whether they're a recovering junkie, whether they still have a bad drinking problem. These are kind of the people you rely on. And, you know, you bring them in, you try to hug them, you try to encourage them, you try to treat them like a human and an adult, you hold them accountable. And I've had a few, and I swear, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I always wanted to see them go on and do something great. I really did. Because I feel that's the gift as an individual I want to give somebody, but as a business owner and somebody who took the risk and took the shot and still takes all the bruises, and I'm not quite that rich, but I got my head above water. I want to see people succeed. I've always felt that way. And maybe that's why I've been kind of blessed as much as I have, because for a guy with no marketing dollars, I've garnered a lot of traction and notoriety, almost on a global sense, for making a silly pork roll, egg and cheese sandwich. And I think one of the reasons is I was passionate and I loved it and I wanted to share it with the world. Because to hint on what you were saying earlier, to me, the greatest thing another human can share with any other human being is food. And it sounds silly, but it's Easter Monday and I'm in the shadow of St. James Church by Red Bank Catholic here in Red Bank. That's the message. You know what I mean? That's the message. We get nourished and we nourish each other. And that's through many ways, but food, I don't care what you believe in, what you want to do in this world, you have to eat or you will not exist. So food for me is kind of that gift. I mean, I'm a business guy. I want to make money, but at the sort of root level of it all, that's what really drove me. Because again, coming from a food truck, and to confess, I used to work on the radio as a disc jockey. That's all I wanted to do. I went to college. I worked in commercial radio. People are listening probably going, you have one of those voices. Well, that's what I wanted to do. And then my life got turned upside down and I had to reinvent myself. And then I fell into media and advertising and I adored that. So I took all those things I learned along my little journey and threw it all into this little food truck without any real marketing money and built a little brand. And really, I think, a brand. I have a product, but I'm a brand. And, you know, I'm at that next step where I'm again sitting there asking the heavens above, like, steer me. Where am I supposed to go? Where is this all leading? Why did I do this in the first place? I mean, I've gone so far, I've actually made a little movie and it's almost done about me, about pork roll, about New Jersey, about people, all these things we've been talking about. Because I think if we start talking this way with each other, we'll go to a better conclusion. And something I firmly believe in, and it seems negative, but conflict at its essence will always produce resolution one way or another. And I don't want to be combative about food, but having a conversation is a bit of a conflict for a lot of people because, as we were discussing earlier, they just are the way they are. They believe how they believe and they eat how they eat and they don't want to hear otherwise. And we just need to have a bigger conversation. So again, I'm a guy making pork roll. I've tried to evolve my thinking to the point. The most evil thing in most pork products is nitrates. People go, oh, they're so bad, so bad. It's really just salt at the end of the day. It's a preservative to make the food last longer, which you would hope would feed more people. But it's something we don't quite think should be in our diet again because it's a synthetic form of salt. So I'm working on even doing that right now. So I'm, again, taking that shot, taking that gamble because being an entrepreneur, I people romanticize it, to work for yourself, you're in charge, blah, blah, blah. I sometimes don't think they fully understand the amount of heart, energy, sweat, all of it. You know, you have to put in to try to get there and you sure as hell can't quit. But you can't be so stubborn that if it's not working to change and try to figure a better path out with whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Because food, anyone going into food at this point, I say, are you out of your mind? But you know it. There's people right now hatching an idea to start a food business. I see them pop up in my town. I wish them all well. I don't sit there as a printer and go, oh man, I want him to fail because I want to win. I like the competition. That's what got me into this in a way. I mean, I'm running my race. That's what I say to myself every day. I'm like, stay in your lane, John, keep running your race. If I keep worrying about left, right, I'm never going to get to where I want to go. So I just try to hyper focus on it. And, you know, here I am with this little pork roll business.
Now, I want to anchor some of this. Let's talk a little bit about this. I'm going to anchor it on a greater level just because I'm there today. It is Easter Monday.
Yeah.
Just
funny, right?
Let's talk about, I'm going to anchor this for everyone. Jesus was a carpenter. Why is that? Why do we not talk about it enough? Honestly, listen, what did a carpenter do? Okay, it wasn't a very high-paying job, nor is it now, but what it is an entrepreneurial job in many ways. You have to find your own work, you have to build your own relationships, and you have to get to know humans. Now, it's kind of weird. You're like, the dude performed miracles, he walked on water, and yet he was a carpenter. Why is that important? Because what we need to understand, guys, why carpenter? He took God's trees and he turned it into furniture or some creation that was helpful to humans. Okay, carpenter was a very general term, anyone that did woodworking of any sort. But let's think about it, fences, whatever. Took wood, God's creations, and turns it into something better. Okay? It's the same thing we do in food. And then along the way, what is that? Why is that important? Why am I saying this? Because Jesus wasn't a politician. He wasn't a homeowner. Well, we call him a shepherd also in some ways. Yes, true. Well-rounded human. He's also a human that gained many skills because if you're going to be a son of God and you're going to work with humans, you have to understand them at a human level, not just a God level, right? If you're going to save them. But it's important that we do this because the tree into the furniture is the key here. We can turn a tree into firewood and burn something down. God gave us it just the same. Or we can turn it into something beautiful. We can transform what God already gave us, creation, the tree, into something more beautiful. Okay? We are the tree, in case anyone missed that in Christianity. Jesus takes God's tree and he makes it better. God takes the human, the creation, and when we follow Jesus, he makes us better. He turns us into furniture. That's the importance of the carpenter. That's the importance of anchoring, and that's the importance of we understand what we do as entrepreneurs, especially in food, taking something tangible and putting love into it and making it something more beautiful. Taking God's love and enhancing that love with our love and making it more beautiful. That is what's important in food. And to your point, competition, I'm going to anchor it with this. Immigrant groups in general tend to be more competitive and protective of their businesses. The main reason is psychological. It's because when you are lower on the totem pole and you're in a new environment and you don't speak the language and you're trying to fight for your life, you're in a fight or flight mode. So by the nature of the brain, what's going on there is I'm in high competition. I'm in survival mode, and survival mode means anyone that comes at me or tries to take what I have, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. This just happened in New Jersey. It got national attention. There was a little Italian deli in a strip mall, and another little Italian deli opened up. And the one guy wasn't doing dinner, then he started doing dinner. And the other guy got all mad, saying that was in the lease. He couldn't do dinner after a certain hour. And it's like, are you kidding me? You guys are having a food fight over who can sell what at when. It's like, it's just funny. Self-preservation is a
Well,
strong driver in humans. You're right. It's
and I'm going to
funny.
anchor this. I mean, the Portuguese, the Spanish, even the Greeks have a little bit of this in some other immigrant cultures, but none as much as the Italians. I don't know why, and I don't know if it's the nature of our culture or not really being Italy until 1905 or 1903 or whenever it was. We threw around a lot of dates earlier, so now I'm getting them all mixed in my head. But like, whatever it was, 1899 or 1898, I think it actually was, whatever. But Italy became Italy, as we know. Before, it was a bunch of city-states, guys, that spoke different languages. They didn't even all speak Italian. And that's when the language got nationalized as Italian, the most common language of all the region. And even that, arguably part of Czechoslovakia, or now Czech Republic, and some of those places, Croatia, were part of Italy, but they're not the way the maps were designed. Their language was common to Italy, their food is common to Italy, but yet they're a different country. Why am I saying this? Well, by the nature of Italians, I think that we've had to survive for generations of rise and fall of empires. And by the nature of that, we've become very entrepreneurial. We understand in our blood that survival has everything to do with rising above the government, rising above the situation, and having relationships. But the other side of it is we assume that everyone is as entrepreneurial as we are, so everyone's going to steal our ideas. Okay, that is an Italian thing. We are very hyper competitive in general because it is the nature of who we are. It's why Italy is so good at sports in general. There is a competitiveness. There is, people think we're yelling at each other when we're just loving each other. We can have an argument in 1 second and have a major breakthrough in that moment, in that argument, and be in love with each other in the next minute. That's part of who we are. That's how fierce it is. And does it look emotional to others? Yeah. But we as Italians have learned through centuries of this up and down of governments, and it's who we are. One, we were able to roll with the punches. We're able to move within government structures different than others because traditionally in our families, we anchor to higher purposes. Okay.
I like that. Higher purposes. That's the truth, right?
Yeah. And so that is important. And a lot of families that I found, a lot of entrepreneurs I coach, it's just not natural to you to have that in your families. It's not a conversation at the table. Even when people are like, your father didn't say I love you. Yeah, maybe he did, but there's that Italian like machismo thing. But there is this thing that he educated me through very, very loving ways that needed to be done as a male.
You know, it's funny. I don't know what made me think of this story. So my father, on my full Italian side of my family, my dad, he was the baby at 12. Most of his brothers, after they got out of the war, did sheetrocking, woodlath, plaster, all that kind of work. That's what his dad did as well. So they all pretty much worked for themselves, to your point. My father was the only outlier that ended up, when he got out of the Air Force, he went to beauty school or hair school and became a hairdresser. So I always had these hangups as a kid, like, what does your father do? I'm like, oh, he's a hairdresser, like in the 70s and 80s. But he always worked for himself. And I knew as a kid that was different. We didn't go on vacation all the time, but we had a summer house. Like, we lived a very great life, but it was just different than my friends whose dads or moms worked for a corporation. Oh, they're off this week for Christmas, that. Always working. I even, yesterday, Easter Sunday, I saw some guys next door fixing the ceiling in the store next to me because I'm in a neat old building. And I'm like, here it is Easter Sunday, and these guys are taping that ceiling, right? They're on their stilts taping the ceiling. And I laughed. I said, that would have been my Uncle Ray or my Uncle Ernest. If it was a job and they could make some money, they'd go out and make some money and see you at dinner later. And it's just how it is. And they used to joke with me when I started this, even. They said to me, you got a partner in this thing? And I go, yeah. I go, why do you want a partner? You know what I mean? They depend on themselves. They are the captain of their own ship. And there is something to be said for that, but they could be a little more laid back. And not to speak totally ill of Italians, but my neighbor in my building is a legendary place in Red Bank, idly named Mr. Pizza Slice, owned by this guy, Nick. He's the second owner. And the Borough Hall people all teased me, said, "Oh, where are you going?" I said, 8A Mama Street. You go, "Oh, you're going to be next to Nikki at Mr. Pizza Slice. Mark my words, you'll have pork roll, egg on the cheese the Monday morning you open." Like typical Italian, like, "Oh, you're going to sell this? I'm going to sell this too now."
Yeah.
He never did that. He was the nicest neighbor to me. You know what I mean? If I ever needed anything, can I borrow some basil? Can I put stuff in your walk-in? He was a great neighbor. So I don't know. People are quick to label somebody one way, and sometimes they can be quite contrary the other way. So food is food, but I like competition. I'll always think it's a good thing. I think for me, though, it goes back to being a food truck. I'm like a little guy in a fishing boat because you're this disruptive little truck. And a lot of times you're competing toe to toe, with 10 other food trucks if it's a food truck event. But as I said, I just always stayed in my lane and just said, point me in the right direction. And God willing, he's kept me true.
I'm going to say this for everyone, okay, because this is a good anchoring thing, which we'll talk about building industry. Imitation is very, 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 very important in the entrepreneurial world, and it's very important to your business, okay? Why am I saying that? Because, guys, if Nashville hot chicken didn't have a lot of imitators and it didn't become acceptable beyond Nashville, then there would be no billion-dollar, I think it's about $10 billion now, Nashville hot chicken alone. It went from, okay, probably making, maybe $3 million a year in Nashville selling hot chicken to now 10 billion. That's an industry, guys. So why is imitation important? Well, if we're truly entrepreneurs, and I just anchored what an entrepreneur is and what our duty is and what our higher purpose is, that means to create jobs, to build our community, to make the world a better place around us. And if you're Italian and your parents were in food before they came to the United States, you also are part of the purity that food needs to stay in purpose, whether you like it or not. Because their grandmothers would go to 15 different stores to get their food. You're like, why don't you just go to Kroger? They're like, because this guy grows the best tomatoes. This guy has the best sausage. He's the only one that doesn't use the nitrates. This guy has the best cheese. He does it all natural. So that's what they would do. Okay. Why is that important? Why am I saying this, guys? Because yes, we can go to a grocery store and get everything, but we're losing track of that. The work to do things is sometimes necessary to get the results we want. And when we skip the work, our businesses, our families, our legacies, they aren't what we expect, and they aren't certainly what we want when we die. And spending so much time in long-term care homes, guys, and hospitals doing food, giving people last meals, having conversations with nurses in the hospital, all of those things, the number one thing everyone regrets, I will tell you, it is not money. It is not, and people say, I wish I spent more time with people. Yeah, that's a pretty high up on the list too. But the number one thing that actually people say is they wish they would have done more for the world while they had the time and energy for those around them. It doesn't give more money away. It isn't more flowers. It isn't whatever. So in our case, we have to run our businesses to run our families. So if we're going to do it and we don't want that regret that we know is there, and why is that regret there? Because we didn't fulfill God's purpose for us, period. No other reason. That's why the vacancy is there at the end. There is a reckoning that is happening when we get old and it's time for us to go. And in that reckoning, there is a reflection. No matter what you've done in your life, it happens to the worst of people with no emotions to the best of people. There is a reflection at the end, whether they admit it or not. There is a reckoning. And so if we don't want it, and we don't want that misery at the end, and we don't want to regret our lives, even as entrepreneurs, we have to have that higher purpose. So how did that, why am I anchoring that against Italians? Because for some reason, for some of the Italians that have held on to this, that really understand, is that the reason it's there is because our families, our legacies, our bloodlines have had to survive stupid decisions by stupid leaders our entire lives, all while bringing massive education, massive technology advancements in terms of aqueducts and libraries and education systems and universities and roads and trading and shipping. Also all came out of Italy, those advancements. So you have a country of people that are constantly advancing for thousands of years, also then anchored in Catholicism, also, which is work is worship, by the way. We just talked about why everyone works so much, but if you look at the real meaning of work is worship and what Italians understand and that we miss in the translation from Old Hebrew, or if you actually have the Latin version of the Bible, it is work is worship. It's the same thing. So that's the thing, guys. How do we survive? How do we better our legacies? How do we live to 110? Don't stop working, because if we're not working, we're not worshiping God, and he's calling us. You're done. You're not doing what I need you to do. Calling you, bro.
Yep. I had a friend, he used to say it all the time. He'd say, Johnny, all I know is work hard, sleep right. Like, all these people can't sleep at night. They lie in bed all stressed out. Oh my God. I'm like, you got to work. It settles you down. It helps you recharge.
Yeah.
Helps you think. Life is work. I didn't understand that till later in life too. I was in my 20s. My father would always be doing something. We lived in a beautiful house right in the ocean, and he'd be on a ladder 3 stories up with a propane torch, taking old paint off the dormer, because he was the only one who would do it. He didn't want to burn the house down, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, can't you go play golf or sit on the beach, do something? No, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. And then when I hit my 30s, 40s, that's when I feel like I started working like that. I don't know any other way. Once you get going like that, it's like it doesn't feel normal to sit still. I don't know if that's good or bad. I can't tell you that. But you better have a lot of energy if you're going to be an entrepreneur. You really better have your energy, because it requires everybody. It's painful. It's tough doing it. And I think, I was lucky in advertising. I worked with a lot of startups, especially in the digital, the latter stage of the 90s, the first wave, and then into the early 2000s. Every other week I met with somebody who had, a little bit of money, maybe a lot of money. Here's the idea. Here's the model. Here's the research. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Like, it's fascinating. And those are people's dreams. You knew when you sat down with them, this is somebody's dream, something they really thought a long time about. But, the good ones are always eccentric, kinetic. Somebody asked me, as an entrepreneur, made or are they born? I'm going to sound like a snot. I think it's either in you or it isn't, because so many people jump in. I saw that in the food truck game. They would jump in, a year later, they were gone. You know what I mean? It was hard work. They weren't making the money right away. We all want to be instantly rewarded, and sometimes it takes years. I mean, I look up to Jersey Mike's hard. Like, he's from here. The guy bought that place at 17, 18 years old in the late 70s, and he sold the thing for $8 billion to BlackRock not even a year ago. Amazing. Crazy. Amazing. Like, and what was his whole thing? He's very giving. He does that day of giving, sub above. His whole message is this aspirational, a little bit better, a little bit better. Can he really back it up? No, not really. I'm sure if we broke down his hams and prosciuttos and all that, we'd be like, what's in there? But at the same time, he runs a really successful, great business, and I'm floored by it. I mean, I think I told you, or maybe you knew this, I got to spend the day with that guy from Panera. Another amazing guy, back to education, UPenn MBA, like, had the credentials, started a cookie business. His first business was selling cookies. That got acquired by a business called Abon Pan, which was a regional little French bread sandwich and a little soup. They had him in New York. I remember him when I worked in New York. And then he grew Abon Pan into what we know today as Panera Bread. Guy sold that for $7 billion. And not to make you laugh, I'm in his kitchen in Brookline, Mass, in this gorgeous, gorgeous house. And he couldn't have been nicer to me. And I bring the pork roll to cook it for him. We're cooking it. He looks me dead in the eye and goes, John, I don't even know how to turn this stove on. And I said, you got to be kidding me. You built a $7 billion food business and you don't even know how to turn a stove on, which it clicked for me at that point. And we should never sell people short. And you strike me as one of these guys in a very beautiful way. But some people are good at growing businesses and building businesses and seeing what others don't and running there and getting to the line. And that's a beautiful thing, because this guy, again, was super, he's credited with creating the whole fast casual concept. That's Chipotle. That's Kava. That's all these new, hey, what do you want? How do you want me to make it kind of models, And the guy couldn't even, he joked. He goes, I don't even know how to turn that stove on. I'm like, what? Because I learned in my food business, I could be beholden to others. I had my recipe. I knew how I wanted it made, but I couldn't do it fast. I just couldn't. I was not a short order cook my whole life. If I had 10 people standing outside that truck, it was like a nightmare for me. I was overwhelmed. So I was beholden to other people. And I said to myself, I'm like, John, you got to learn to do this. You can do it faster. Just work at it. And I did. And I've become real fast at it. And now I feel almost better as a leader because they look, I'm not just edging you as I don't know how to do it. I'll show you how to do it. And back to my boy Jersey Mike's, Pete, he still can jump behind a line at any one of his stores and start making sandwiches. Just throw me in the spot. You want me on the slicer? You want me here? You want me there? Like, I love that because I think that's important, and not to fall back on you know who, but I believe a certain guy, led by example. And as a business owner, I think that's the greatest skill you can try to tell another person is if you're not willing to get your hands and knees and clean under that sink, don't expect them to do it either. And
Yeah,
people tease me. I'll still be on my hands and knees cleaning that store because it matters to me. And every time I'm on the floor doing it, I'm like, you know what? One day you won't have to do this, but right now you got to do this. And it matters. And so when I read a Google review, somebody goes, wow, I went to Johnny Porkwell's finally. Couldn't have been a greater experience. That guy's unbelievable. The sandwiches are phenomenal. And the place is spotless. If you look at my YouTube videos about my truck, every time somebody compliments, that's one of the cleanest food trucks I've ever seen. I'm like, because it matters to me. Does it matter to everybody? No. I've eaten from dirty food trucks and had phenomenal food. I don't mean dirty like, oh my God, call the health department, but they've been driving around. They're muddied up. They're out there working every day hard. So, it's all in the beholding, but I love what you said. As an entrepreneur, I do believe that. And I've met a few of them along the way. Probably the greatest one besides Panera. I met Richard Branson one time. They just believe. And they want those around them to believe. And that's very similar to another story we've touched on. Just believe, just stay the course, and we'll get there, That's a very important message for anybody, but for entrepreneurs, especially in food, which again, back to our point, is so hyper competitive as it should be. You're asking people to spend the same money for one thing over another. What makes you better than the other? Service, flavor, the usual things. But I just love this conversation.
No, and I'm going to anchor it for everyone, the competitive thing, just really quickly for everyone, because we are entering a new world. And I know competition is based off trying to get the eyes and the mouths, in our case, of the same individuals. Okay. But let's just put the world into perspective for everyone right now, and why industry is more important than an imitation, or helping each other is more important right now than ever before, and why the building of the industry is better for everyone's bottom line than competing with the person next door or across the street. We've seen Italian food grow across the United States, buffalo wings, all of this stuff is because of imitation and competition. Pizza, okay, just isn't by accident, okay? And it's not just one company or two companies that brought it. People imitated it across the world. Pizza, Italian immigrants were like, I'm coming to America. What's an easy, cheap product? Dude, I'm going to open a pizza shop. But I got to figure out how to do the dough. That's always the hardest part. And I got to match whatever. Everyone had their own system, which makes them all unique, which is why so many exist, okay? In food, we can still make things unique. Even though people are trying to imitate us, they can imitate the words. They can't imitate the recipe, generally. Okay. Can they almost get it right? Yeah. Almost get it right. They're not going to have your same equipment, your same pot, your same pans, your same people making the food. So even if they imitated exactly, and trust me, I know this, I made the exact same recipes in the exact same hospitals across the exact same regions. And even all of that, if the kettle was slightly different size, if this was different size, there was always slightly tweaks you had to make based on location around those little things, even though you're producing the same food to get it to taste the exact same. Okay? Yep. So that's how I know, guys, because more times than not, it's proven that way. So here's the other reason it's important. We aren't dying anymore. In the next 20 years, most likely, we're going to be replicating humans, okay? We're going to be transferring our memories into a new memory of a human in the next 20 to 30 years. How do I know? I've been seeing it done and people experimenting it. You do a lot of research hospitals. You're in those communities. This isn't something, and they're doing it to animals already, okay? You can now transfer our memory electronically because our brains are made that way and of energy, and pass it on to another human. And they'll have all the memories. It's not an unknown thing. So not only is it possible that we're going to live longer, it's also possible that in theory, we will never die, at least our memory. Okay. Does that mean our soul passes on, or what happens to our soul? I have no idea theologically, and I am not prepared to have that conversation because I'm only at the beginning of this whole seminary thing, and I'm only on what has happened, not yet totally understanding what is coming. Okay, because that is one of my focuses as a master of divinity and leadership is I have to lead humans to where we're going spiritually, which is way more complicated than anyone ever has any imagined. Because now I've got to take the past, which in a lot of ways is proof that we still deny, and now use it to prove something that hasn't happened yet, potentially. So that's what we're talking about. But the real thing here is, no matter which direction we point forward, guys, I will tell you this. The greatest hope we have for humanity is in food. Okay? It's not going to go away. And I know people are like, oh, we'll be able to live off of sunlight or energy or whatever. It's still a food. It's still us giving something to someone. It's still us having to produce it in a way that's tangible, that's whatever. I get all the things out there. But here's what I'm saying. Food is going to grow. Okay. And it's not going to be more industrialized. It's going to be more centric, because the more knowledge we have, and if our brains grow longer, the more likely we are going to be to start growing more of our own food and getting control of our own diets and wanting to live longer. And if now the shift is becoming, okay, we're starting to get the idea that we can live longer. How can we maximize this? The diet's going to become part of that. Okay. So overall, if we're going to set up our kids or our businesses to be legacy businesses, we have to really think about what the future is holding. And the future is not holding a limit of humans to consume food. Okay, we can scratch that. And the limits are not this planet anymore, as we've got now 2 billionaires on a private side going into space. That means profitability is at stake here. So even if it's not those two, there's competition between those two. They're imitating each other. Amazon and Musk, right? SpaceX and Blue Origin. The imitation is important. They're competing with each other in competition. They're growing an industry and getting us off this planet. So if we outgrow it, we're not in trouble. And all the animals and species we don't eat that are just going extinct because we're squeezing them out of here, maybe we can give them life in a new place. Because what can we do? What has God given us? He's the God of creation, and in humans, he allows us to participate in that creation, planting seeds, controlling the world, and being a master of environment. That doesn't mean dominating it. That means master as an educational level. In the Bible, master does not mean dominance. It means I know I have knowledge and wisdom over it. Meaning I'm in one in unison. I can grow any plant. I can get control of it to help my family. Noah putting control of the animals to get them on the boat. That's wisdom. So that's what we're talking about here. I want to talk about one thing with you, John. Let's talk about the starting your own business. You talked about everything falling apart. I think this is a very anchoring moment for who you are. I think it's a very important anchoring moment of this conversation, because that transition life, there's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of people denying you. Yes.
You know, I'm telling you, it was like, I've explained it so many times and it always goes the same, but it's like, nobody would hire me. And I think I was such damaged goods. And even though I had so much in my head and so much to give still, everybody perceived me as this poor guy. He's just in such a crux right now with his life. Like professionally, I could not get back in advertising. Like even if I tried to go for a junior job, I was way overqualified for, and I would have been more than happy to do it. You know, they wouldn't hire me. And then if it was anything on a senior equal level, there was always somebody who would back to competition, threatened, oh, I can't have this guy in here. He's too dynamic. He's too charismatic. He'll blah, 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 blah. So, you know, I just never fit into that world. And that's when I said, I have to do something. And I had that idea in my head because I had seen that one little food truck and I did one for a client and I learned a lot about how you get them on the road. And I had $5,000 and I said to my friend, we were standing in a bar and I said, you know, I have this idea. He had a restaurant. I want to do a food truck and I just want to sell the best pork roll, egg and cheese sandwich and a great cup of coffee. That's it. He goes, I think you have a great idea. He goes, you got any money? And I said, yeah, I got $5,000. He goes, all right, let me think about it. And he came back the next day and he goes, you know, under the Driscoll Bridge, which is this bridge that separates pretty much North and South Jersey, there was a little old funny truck, a little Grumman Curbmaster, like a classic little food truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he goes, I'm going to go by and see what the guy wants for that truck. So he comes back and he says, Johnny, I looked at the truck. Believe it or not, that thing's got a generator in it, but there's no kitchen in it. But I know how to do that stuff. We could easily build it out. I'm going to tell him, well, I'm going to offer him $4,000 for it. So he stops by. So let's start that truck. And the guy's like, oh, we refurbish tour buses and big buses. We just got this truck at auction. Let me see. You're offering 4K? Boom. The guy takes 4K. We buy the truck. We build it ourselves with a little extra money we have left and painted it black and white because they were painting a bus at that point, black and white. So they already had that paint going. We said, hey, will you paint this little truck for us? How much? The guy goes, $900. Paints the truck black and white. That became my little color scheme. And then my other dear, dear friend who sadly succumbed to COVID, the only guy I knew that actually got COVID and passed away. We were friends, God, for 30 years. And he had a sign shop and did all graphics and the police cars and all that kind of stuff. And I said, Steve, I'm starting this thing called a pork roll truck. I want you to do graphics for it. So I bring a little black and white truck. He goes, I love that it's black and white. Everything's so colorful. We're going to go the complete opposite way and just be black and white to stand out. Food trucks normally always scream and look at me, look how colorful I am. So we went the other way. He came up with the original logo lockup, and he's the guy that actually convinced me to put my name on it because I wanted to just call it the pork roll truck, like that idea I told you, the dessert truck. But he's like, it's got to have your name on it. It's like Jersey Mike's. It's got to have a name on it. It's got to be Johnny's Pork Roll, and that's how Johnny's Pork Roll was born. And we started driving around in that little truck, and that friend of mine with the restaurant was instrumental in helping me. Everybody along my path really helped me. And I hate that term journey. I don't hate it, but it's like we all use that, but it is a journey. And different people come along at different spots in that journey to either teach you something, remind you of something, give you a bit of knowledge to your point that helps you learn something else. And that's why when I got into the food truck game and people would come to me and ask me about a food truck, I was the complete opposite of what I encountered. There's even a video that has me saying that verbatim, but I wanted to help people. And I was one of the original members of the New Jersey Food Truck Association, which was really a lobbying group to protect the food trucks and some of the licensing fees we paid. But we really looked at our organization as an information pool for others that wanted to try to do this because any business venture is a risk. And the thing I always adored about a food truck, and you probably understand this, I know you will, but the risk to get into a food truck, the cash outlay, is not as crazy as opening up a physical restaurant with an idea because, again, you have rent, you have material, you have build out, stop paying rent, then your landlord takes all your stuff. At least with the food truck, if you borrow a little money from family members, wherever you can find it, angel investors, friends, family, the usual route. If it does go upside down, hopefully you could sell the truck, get a few bucks back and try to get square with those folks. But it and I know when somebody lends money, especially on that level, sometimes if it comes back great, 9 times out of 10, it may not. But I was somewhat successful in that regard and was able to get square and just keep going my path. At one time, I had 3 of those food trucks, and I never had one newer than a 1990. So I was always buying these older food trucks, as I called them, failed little dreams on wheels, But I built it out that way, then went brick and mortar, kept one truck, and then bought myself like an idiot. I still think that was the worst decision I made, if I have to be totally honest with myself. I should have kept driving my old truck. It ran just fine, but I got it in my head that I was, Mr. Big Johnny Pork Roll. So I sucked it up and, contracted with a company to build my own truck to spec like I wanted it. And I love it. And it definitely can help me go faster and make more money and go all over God's green dirt. You know what I mean? Mechanically, it won't break down on me, but, was a lot of cash outlay that I put on my little business too quick, I think. But knock on wood, I'm almost done paying it off. So at least that'll be a fixed asset I own, for my business as I try to take my next step, which is the hardest thing for me. You talk to people in business, at least in advertising, the rule was, it's easy to get a firm up and make $1 million. A lot of guys can get a firm up with a couple people and start billing $1 million a year. It's more difficult to go from the 1 million to the 2-3. And then it's even bigger pain in the ass to try to get up that next level, because as you grow, it gets out of control, which makes me think back to the small owned Italian business. You perfected over years the things like fish in a barrel, but there's all that knowledge, there's all that heritage, there's all that history, the ingredients, all of it. So, I don't know if I'm not as young as like Jersey Mike's. I'm going to be old, for God's sakes, I'm 58 and I'm still working like I'm in my 20s in a food business. But, I hope I live long enough that I'll get to see it.
Yeah,
really
it's interesting.
It's become a nostalgic place, my little store. Like,
yeah.
People travel. I had people from overseas, from Asia, that
That's
have
what I
heard
was going to
about
say. I mean, the
so,
amount of people that talk about that's how it came across my thing enough times. And even on a moral and ethical level, your business, the work you put in, the hard work, that's sort of, I reach out to a lot of people for the podcast, guys, but sometimes it's directed. Sometimes I'm like, okay, this person, I start doing research on the business and looking at their overall ethos, because obviously I try to anchor the higher purpose, guys. So I try to bring those entrepreneurs on here. That's my task, which is not easy when you're releasing one every other day.
No, but
so I work extra hard.
Your message really is good. And I was raised Catholic my whole life, and I will always call myself a Catholic. Was I'll shoot you for it. I said, well, whatever, so be it. That's what I am.
Yeah.
But it is so fundamentally important, and it's something that's so lacking, in just everyday life, any way that you can infuse it into the mindset of those going down this road of food and a dream. And it's just, just kind of know, if you believe it, you're not walking alone. And I do believe there's a bigger reason for why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I still don't know what it is. And I swear I lie in bed every night and say, come on, what is it? What is it? I know you want me to do something bigger than this. What is it you want me to do? And I just say, all right, well, today I got to get up and make pork roll sandwiches and smile and feel blessed. Because I still work in my store. People laugh because I think I've become this little character. Like, I don't do this anymore. I'm like, yeah, I do. Here I am. This is, like you said, Jesus was a builder. Peter Simon was a fisherman. Like, we do what we have to do. We go out and we produce, And I only do it for one thing. I mean, I don't know what my life would be like without my daughters. I mean, those two little women, they're just, it's crazy. It's a blessing. Children, all of it. You were telling me earlier, your dad went to school down by me. So, I mean,
my dad grew up there. My dad grew up in West Long Branch, right by you. That's where he grew up.
Oh my God. That's a great area. It really is.
And went to Monmouth, now University was college then.
Yeah,
but he played soccer there
college
when they had high tops and leather soccer balls. Yeah, captain of his team.
Wild.
Yeah,
I did. I mean, I knew business, and I watched my dad work so hard and be very successful. I mean, we lived a really good life, and I told you he was a hairdresser, and people look for like, that's what your father? I go, yeah, he's a hairdresser. Like, if he was a young guy today, he probably would have had a TV show. I mean, he was charismatic, good looking, very good at what he did. He loved it. His customers loved him. Like, he built, was really successful working with his hands, basically. But he didn't have that other side of business acumen that, a father can give his son. Like you said, your dad went more CFO or something, right? More on those levels. You do learn things a little differently growing up around that.
I experienced him as a CFO, a COO, and a CEO. And then we had family businesses, and my mom was entrepreneurial as well. So, I mean, I was very fortunate. There's no doubt about it. And then being Italian, and there's a compounding of entrepreneurism that is in my family. Grandfather owning a cabinetry shop, a lumber yard, a gas station, and a counting place. As he came in New Jersey, in West Long Branch, and where we're talking about. So, it's, these things are because of survival and because of understanding that the best thing a man can do, and woman, I'm just saying man because I am one, and I went to all boys school, and from Catholic, I try to stay in my zone. My circle, because that's where God works, in my circle, not in, if I'm judging your circle, God's not working. Okay. Because God only works in my circle with me and him. Just want to anchor that for everyone. God doesn't work when I'm judging others. That doesn't happen. That's not where he is. He works inside of all of us to create us. He doesn't work in me saying, oh, I want that person to be better. You can pray that he does, hope, but that's just not the way. That doesn't mean he does it. That's between that person and him. So, but I'm going to anchor this for you, Johnny.
Either one's fine. It was funny. On one side of my family, they call me Johnny.
Yeah, I just like using people's full name. I believe we have them for a reason. I believe your name has a greater meaning than you think. I think that you should look at like what you've done. You have a friend that died. Before he passed on something very great. Not only your food truck, but he gave you a message. He's like, it's not pork roll, it's Johnny pork roll. And why is that important? And I'm just going to anchor it for this, because it's going to take someone who's willing to put their name behind it to build an industry around pork rolls, because it hasn't been built yet on a national or international level.
That's right.
And it's going to require an industry, which means this individual needs to have enough humility through a life experience, which we just anchored, to say, I need to give it away also, because if I'm going to really bring pork rolls to the world, I need others to help me do it. And that takes a group of apostles. Okay. And it's not everyone, it's not thousands of people, but it is a select few of people that I know will be worth investing my time in, that will go do greater ripple effects for the pork rolls on that level. Okay. So I'm going to anchor the higher purpose, because for me, for your business, for the name of your business, for the research that I've done, and one particular reason I've taken so much interest, and I'll be honest, as I started diving down the rabbit hole of you, I dove farther in more than I would have normally, because the business you have, the way you work in it, you're at a point where you're trying to figure out how to scale this thing. Is it at a time you're starting to pay off your debt? You're starting to have success. You're getting comfortable, which can be dangerous, because we need to constantly seek on comfort to grow our businesses, grow ourselves, and not go broke. I'll be honest. The minute we get comfortable as an entrepreneur, that's bad things happen. Okay. And that's not anxiety, guys. This is a healthy form of uncomfort that keeps us driving. That's also God's uncomfort in us to keep us growing towards him. Or in some cases, if you want to translate it, being more like Jesus. So but I want to anchor this for you, because your voice, the showmanship of your father, the flair of your business, you're starting to just get your step. You're starting to just get your groove. I would say you've got a food truck and a brick and mortar. You're running two different businesses. These are a scalable model. Okay. Why am I also saying that? Because if any smart person's going to corporately grow anywhere, a franchise, or start going, they experiment in those regions with a food truck first. They try to figure out locations. They try to do it. They narrow down an audience, and then they put one there, and then they move the food truck. Or if I'm franchising, I encourage the franchisees to put a food truck there, start doing it because it's a cheap option as they're building the franchisee system, and then do that food truck in their region to build that business in the region. It is part of it is the way we do things now. It is an important piece of not only having your base, but having your recon going out there and doing your research and development in the future.
It's funny too, and I'd be curious how you'll connect those dots. But people talk about love in the sense of letting go. That true love is letting go in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like this idea, which is so hard to get your head around, but you can kind of make sense of it and reconcile it. But the toughest thing for me as an entrepreneur, and I've seen this with other guys in food, especially more than anything, because it's not like I wrote a piece of code. Here's my piece of code. Go make money with my piece of code. Or here's my platform. This is what it does. Go make money with it. It's me that makes it. And it's back to me putting myself into it. Sure, I train people to do it and they follow it to a T because consistency is so important. But how do I want to say this where it makes sense? I don't want to missay what I'm trying to say, but you have to, at the darkest moments of it all, you just have to stay focused on it and just keep plowing along and believe. And to me, religion, regardless of anything, is that you believe. You have to, because if you don't believe, then what is there? And I keep staying on this path, saying I believe in it. And those trucks, I'm just a big fan of the food truck and the blessings I've been given in this whole thing. And I don't know why. And I keep saying there has to be a reason why. And that's why I joke when I lie in bed. I'm like, God, I can't get sick, because I've been pretty healthy, knock on wood. I don't know how I've managed to make it this far. All my knees, all my hips, outside of maybe a few teeth I get pulled. I'm pretty much how I came out. And I'm like, as long as I have a purpose and a mission, then I think God will keep me going. Do you know what I mean? And I'm taking care of my elderly mother, who's 84, and dementia is a big issue with her right now. But she's so defeated. And it's like, like anybody tells you, you can't really help somebody who they want to help themselves. But it doesn't stop you or me from trying to help those around us, because we honestly believe the better everyone around us is, the better all of us are. And, back to food and giving of yourself and all that. It's tough, man. And I hope, to my point, you said something earlier, I can't remember how you phrased it, but I wish my mother, at least at this stage in her life, could at least give the wisdom and reconcile her life, like you said. That was it. And think back, what should I have done more? And she's not at that place. I wish she was. That would be beautiful. But so negative, so down, and every day it's like the same thing I go through with her, trying to pick her up, and it's exhausting. And that's why, again, when we talked about, you need a lot of people to get down the road, whether it's a guy who fixes fridges, especially a food truck guy, any mechanics I needed to rely on, how many nights that silly truck would break down on me in the middle of nowhere. Like, nobody does anything by themselves. And in a lot of ways, I always joked I'm like John the Baptist, but a pork roll.
Yes.
That I'm going around trying to spread the word about this.
I was going to say that earlier, but I wasn't going to go there just yet. I wasn't sure how you would receive it yet. I don't know you that well, but yes, I would call it that.
Yeah, they said we have to round up all the Catholics and shoot them. I'd be like, and I would hope that would never happen, but I'd be like, yeah, I'm a Catholic. I'm not going to deny who I am. You know what I mean? Not that I think about dying for my religion, but in my heart, I do see myself saying yes. And John obviously lost his head in the end. So I don't know. Maybe
it is the pork roll thing. I do agree. I think part of it is the bringing them to the water to even, and this metaphorically baptize them, because it's something that they aren't familiar with. It is New Jersey. It is Italian in a lot of ways, but I do think that it's in the way that it is, in the way that it's different, in the way that it matters, that it's definitely something that's going to grow. That's why I have this on the show. And I want to emphasize something else for everyone just real quick before we go here. The reason Nashville Hot Chicken didn't grow outside of Nashville before recently is because the small group of individuals that were there were so competitive with one another, burning each other's buildings down. Maybe, I don't even know how bad it was. I'm just making things up. But it was really competitive there amongst the 3 or 4 individuals that did it for a time, that it became so competitive that it became like a hidden gem, because they wouldn't even talk about it. They were afraid to market it, really, because no one wanted anyone else to know about it, because they had the best Nashville hot chicken recipe. Well, what happened is it didn't grow. It wasn't until an outsider, we'll call it an outsider, someone that wasn't from that culture and that background, came in and deconstructed it and rebuilt it and started building it to the Nashville base that was coming in as tourists in the 2010s. Okay, so what happened there is there's individuals there that were building it, were the first movers, that all should have collaborated together, and all 3 of them could have the biggest Nashville hot chicken brands in the world. But instead, what we have is a group of imitators that came in, perfected it, and then scaled it. So
that's business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's because of their own shortcomings and their lack of trust in each other. I really appreciate
and relying on each other.
Imitation.
Yeah.
Because I get really kind of mad at that, because I took something like pizza, right? Everybody, what goes on a pizza, we all know. But certain guys do it really well. Why? Well, he does this. He uses this flour. He uses this sauce. He puts sugar. He doesn't put sugar. He uses garlic paste. He doesn't. Like, everybody's got, like the chicken thing, everybody's got their little recipe. How they go about doing it. And I used to really get upset, because you're going to laugh, but I feel like I started that cutting the sandwich in half thing and saying, look at it. Now you go on Instagram, there's 100,000 guys every day cutting a sandwich in half, going, look at that. It used to drive me nuts. And the line, well, imitation is the highest form of flattery. But in that imitation, they're helping me. But I don't see it that way, because I get locked up in my own thoughts and my own desires, instead of saying it's spreading the word of what you're doing. That's a good thing. That helps more people want to try it,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, one of the things about Instagram and social media, guys, is a lot of stuff is rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And so it's one, I refuse to do it. And I'm having this, I struggle with these in my bit. They're like, well, if it was good 2 years ago, we'll just rewrite it. It'll be good now. And it just seems so, I don't know why, to me, it's like, it'd be like rinsing and repeating the Bible. We already wrote it once. The information's already out there for someone to go, why erase it and repost it again? I get it. You want to put it in front of people, and everyone's putting your information out there in the forefront, but it just seems like a lazy way of putting out information. Like, we should always be improving on the information. If we want to rewrite it and add to it, great, but we shouldn't rinse and repeat it.
No, it's scary. They're using AI to do a lot of that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I get all these
yeah,
ads, where they're looking constantly we know when they're hungry and we'll serve them an ad at that exact moment. It's
yeah.
like crazy.
No, I
It's
know. I
absolutely
was talking
crazy.
about aeroponics a lot in my home, and now that's nothing but on my phone is aeroponics everywhere. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, it was just a conversation. One of the things I want to emphasize for everyone, one of the things that seminary taught me is look at things contextually, biblically, okay? We have to understand that before Jesus, guys, the world was an eye for an eye, and even worse, it was 2 eyes for an eye. Whoever had the power served down the punishment in greater fold than the crime that was committed. Okay. And so what we have to understand is that an individual and all of his apostles, who were all killed, by the way, for their beliefs, all of them, the thing that we have to understand is that grassroots, that effort, those things happened. Jesus' ministry was only 3 years old at 30 years old. Okay, that's when he started his ministry. It doesn't mean he wasn't putting good in the world beforehand, but he didn't go into the act of preaching and on the pursuit that he was until 30 years old. Okay, contextually, in ancient world, 30 years old is like 50. Okay, 50, 60 years old. Contextually, people aren't living that long, particularly in the harsh environments of the Roman Empire. And while the Roman Empire is claiming to be bringing civilization and advancement to the world, it's also coming with anyone who challenges that is killed. So there's not democracy, there's not freedom. It's advance or else. Okay. Why am I saying that? Okay. Because it's important to understand that age does not matter. And contextually, we have to understand that even in Jesus' time, most people were being prepared to preach at the ages of 12, 14, 16 years old. So he's half a lifetime behind by the time he starts. And everyone would be like, well, that's because he's Jesus. Well, okay, arguable, great. Well, that means that if Jesus can do it, I better at 44, 45 years old be pursuing him even more, because if he could do it, I better learn from him so I can do it. Okay, that's one argument. The other thing is that anyone should understand that when it's called to ministry, when it's called to build our brand, it's after the skills have been stacked. The carpentry, humanity, evading persecution, all the things that happen there, like we all go through. We avoid death. We avoid being broke. We avoid doing whatever as an entrepreneur. We go through a lot of sufferings and a lot of trial and tribulations, no matter what age we are as entrepreneurs. And it doesn't stop. It's never over, no matter how successful the business is. Why am I saying that? Why am I saying that for everyone? Because it doesn't matter when we start over, but the important part is that we do not rinse and repeat, okay? We do not, the Bible is a living document, meaning that we can apply it to any age contextually. So yes, we need to understand when it was said and why it was said 100%, but we also need to understand that why it's a living word means why it's applied today in God's word. Okay. So what am I saying? That means at any point in time, I can change who I am and I can change my trajectory. And if I don't do it, and if I'm not hearing it and life seems bad and I'm not doing it, it's probably because I'm not listening, number one. And number two, I'm not understanding what all humans are called to do, which is to grow the world around us, starting with the humans and then with the animals and the plants and whatever. So if you take the steps like Johnny's taking, move the bad things out of the ingredients, build the people, build a community, love your neighbor like you love yourself, love God, be willing to die for him. Okay, it seems crazy in today's world because most people's faith wouldn't be that faithful. So the question becomes, well, then how do you ever know your purpose if you're not willing to go to death for it? Because it's no different. Here's the funny part, guys, is the willing to go to death for it gives you eternal life, also long life here so you can do what you need to do on God's kingdom. That's the irony there. That's the whole human trick of the mind that the devil plays, is we think things, or we have this logic that is actually illogical if we understand energy. I can feel someone's energy when they're angry. And guys, guess what? If I build a relationship with my dog, I know when my dog has to go out. I know when my dog's hungry. He doesn't say words to me. He doesn't talk to me. And it's no different than God. If I build a relationship with him, I don't need the words to understand what he's telling me. No different than we don't need words for our dog or our cat or our horse to tell us what's going on. Once we build a relationship with them over time, we understand without words. Okay, so that's anytime you want to change or something's not going right, it's often just listen, which means there has to be silence in the things coming at us, or the research, or we need to pick up a book, but somewhere in around us and something we need to do is the answers, or the trajectory change, or the $5,000 we need to put into a beat up truck. If I didn't anchor that, what I'm talking about is being stripped of everything and feeling like the world's against us and I have bad luck. It is not bad luck. It is God calling you to what your purpose is. Addiction, alcohol, whatever you're going through, loss of family, divorce, whatever, affairs. It seems really bad, and people are like, whoa, God doesn't exist if that humans can do that. Well, God gave us free will. God is a God of creation. He creates. He does not manage. Do we understand that? So in creation and being the image of God, we have the ability to create the world around us too. Through our energy, no different than he did, in our free will. And that's the choice, guys. When we make that choice, when we understand that that's our calling, that the negative we're feeling, we've been abused, we've been molested, I understand all of it. It's happened to me. But when we understand that in a free world system, God's not going to stop it, but he is going to use it for you to create a better reality or a spiritual world here, so that God's kingdom is less spiritual and reality, and it's all one world where we don't talk about them as two different worlds. That's what's going on theologically. Anyway.
I had no idea we were going to get into this heavy of a conversation. This has been just a pleasant way to spend the last hour plus listening and talking.
So,
really,
and I know I'm a little farther fetched than everyone, but I have the entrepreneurial lens. I'm not a pastor or someone that pursued God in the traditional way for whatever reason. I chose to go to Catholic school, just so everyone knows. My parents did not put me there. I chose the schools. I chose an all-boys school also, oddly, because I wanted that pursuit with God inside of me. Did I like girls? Did I have sex before marriage? Did I fool around? Yes, I did all those things, guys. I'm not a perfect human. I'm not going to claim to be. Okay. But I am going to say that in the brokenness, in the allowance of sin, in the allowance of things that happened, it helped frame who I am. And it helped me when I was broken and when I had sin patterns or addiction problems or things that happened because of what happened to me as a kid, really negative thing, that I was able to eventually turn that negative into a positive. And I was able to understand that what God's actually calling me to do is not sit in it, but use it and say, hey, I was molested as a kid too, but there is purpose in it if you choose it. Now, for me, it's being an entrepreneur, it's growing the world around me, and it's using my voice and it's using my resources and everything that I have to try to make a better world, because I can't think of any other way of stopping bad things happening, like abuse or whatever, than getting all the entrepreneurs in the world to live by a higher level, because that's who I relate to. I'm the carpenter. I can relate to the carpenters, the entrepreneurs, the Simons. I can relate to the taxpayer turned, you get it, Matthew guys, if I'm not anchoring it properly. But you understand that that's who I relate to. I relate to the person that's looking to change their life and to have a greater purpose and to pursue something more, because I can't live in brokenness. And did I live in a good home? And did I have great parents? And are my parents still together? And all those things? Yep. All those things. So why is it that Justin had all this happen? Well, and why was it allowed? Because if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be who I am. My voice wouldn't be right here, right now, doing what I'm doing. And when it was time to raise my voice, if I hadn't been through all the trials and tribulations, all the knockdowns, all the times having to get back up, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Yeah, struggle really teaches you who you are. That suffering and struggle, and I always thought of it that way. We've all looked at, if you've ever been in any church, there's the cross, and who got nailed to the cross, the greatest suffering of all, and the whole backstory, we all know it. But struggle is who makes us, it's what makes us. And it's hard. And that's why, again, when people get knocked down, you got to be the one around them to pick them back up, dust them off, tell them to believe in themselves, and keep them going. That's our job. I really do think as humans, that's our job.
Where can they? Yeah.
And make everybody realize they're valued.
Exactly.
I feel so many people just don't feel valued. And that's why, Christianity, religion, it says it's hard. You are valued. You do matter. You're special. And that's why I say to these people when they're so down, I'm like, there's no one else like you. You're unique. I can't make another you, and everybody's story is their own, and everybody runs their own race. And we live in a day and age when media and everything around us is reminding us how we're not where we think we're supposed to be, but we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And we are the master of our ship, and we can control what we do and where we go. And even when it comes at you, I hate that Nietzsche line. He gave it to us. I'm a big fan of his. I really am. And there was a guy that was as spiritual as they come and led him down a path of thinking about everything. The classic God is dead line, but he's the one that coined the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And hell, back to Easter Monday. Didn't stop him.
Exactly.
Thank God. I mean, that's the truth. He's risen. My mom gets mad. I joke because I would say all day, have you heard the good news? He's risen. Like, it's a rebirth. It's a rebirth. And that's the beauty of life. And that's a good story. That's one mankind needs more than ever.
Yeah, repurpose, regeneration, especially if we live longer. Our lives are going to be a lot of regenerating, a lot of repurposing, a lot of jobs becoming obsolete or skills becoming obsolete, guys. So we really need to focus on the skills in our life on a higher level that don't go obsolete. Human connection, building humans. That's why they're anchored there, guys, because they surmount being a carpenter. They surmount being an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes bigger than us, and that's a beautiful thing. I hate to say it, but I have to jump.
Yeah, me too. Where can they find you online real quick as you go?
All my social media is under Pork Roll Truck. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, now known as X, all those things. And then our own website, johnnyporkroll.com. I also have a little film. I'm going to send it to you when I hang up. I'm going to send you the clip of the little teaser we put together for this film I've been working on, which I think you'll find interesting.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of other sort of food entrepreneurs, chefs, sort of Jersey luminaries, all about pork roll in Jersey and the fact that we're so outspoken in New Jersey. I think people are fascinated with the funniness that's New Jersey, and it goes back to being Italian. Obviously, The Sopranos and Housewives and Cake Boss and Jersey Shore. And we can go down the list. I don't know any state, that doesn't have a major metropolitan city yet gets so much attention being sandwiched between, Philadelphia and New York. You know what it's like. We're this little state stuck between two giant cities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know. I'm just a big proponent. I think New Jersey really is a unique microcosm of the whole country in a lot of weird ways. It's like that last bastion of just diversity and culture and ups and downs and economic woes and really rich people and really poor people. It's got everything in New Jersey. It's just, it's the greatest state in the world in my mind.
There you go.
And as I joke, I'm proud to say, like pork roll, I was invented in New Jersey.
There you go. I do think pork roll has global impact.
I think, you were invented, were you born in New Jersey?
No, I was born in Pennsylvania.
Well, as they used to say, everyone has a friend in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there you go.
I used to like when they had that in the license plates. Remember you say you have a friend in Pennsylvania? Because you always meet somebody from PA. It's such a big state.
I know, yeah.
Well, anyway, we should do this again. I would love to chat
absolutely.
with you.
I'd love to have you back on. You can click on the link anytime you want. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
You have it.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing things the right way and you're delivering some good messages, and that's so needed. And building people up. I think you're I hate to say it, you're doing God's work, Justin, but you are.
Absolutely.
So I guess all of us are in our own way.
Yeah,
all right, man. Well, if you want to, if you ever want to chat again, you know how to reach me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reach out to you for another episode. Yep. And everyone listening in, thank you guys for listening in, and we're out.
All right. Bye.